The other day we looked at every Premier League club's most underrated player on FIFA 19, and it only seems fair that we take a look at the opposite end of the spectrum. So today we're going to look at every Premier League club's most overrated player on FIFA 19. Before we start though, the other day we discussed a wager going on with HITC 7s about trying to gain 1,000 subscribers in one day. And while we didn't do that on Saturday, we got more than halfway there at least, with 572 new subscribers, so thank you if you were one of those people. Can we achieve 1,000 today? There's only one way to find out. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and like what we do. But now back to today's video. Arsenal Mesut Ozil. While it may just look like we're joining the Mesut Ozil bashing bandwagon, we think an 86 rating is a bit kind for the German playmaker. While on his day he's an irresistible footballer, how often have we seen those days in the past year? Ozil is never going to be a hard-working player, nor is he a pace merchant, but his biggest asset is his passing and vision, which is why he's rated so highly. However, he's always come across better than he actually is on FIFA, so we think maybe that he should start the game slightly lower than an 86, then potentially getting a ratings boost later down the line if his form warrants it. Bournemouth Jermaine Defoe. The Cherries have two top strikers right now in Josh King and Callum Wilson, and the pair are leaving Jermaine Defoe behind. The veteran striker looked a great signing last year despite his age, but a move back to Dean Court hasn't been a massive success, with Defoe struggling to hit the heights that he did back at Sunderland. He begins the game as a 77, just one rating below Wilson and King, which doesn't seem like a fair reflection right now. However, I'm sure if you were to do a career mode with Bournemouth, Defoe's rating would quickly go down as his legs get older and older. Brighton Dale Stephens. On the outside looking in, Dale Stephens seems a bit of a nothing player. The midfielder is industrious and that seems to be about it, but that in turn might be why he's loved so much by the Brighton faithful. But in the world of FIFA, there's no room for sentiment, so a 76 for Dale Stephens seems a bit too high. In comparison, Kyle only gets a 72, which seems a lot lower for someone who can do a similar sort of job in the middle of the park for Chris Hughton's side. Burnley Jack Cork. We mentioned him in the underrated video, but how on earth can Jack Cork be a 79 rated player? No disrespect to the lad, I mean he's a decent player, but he's one of many Burnley players who seem to have gotten an unnecessary ratings boost following their epic season last time out. To be nearly an 80 rated midfielder, you'd think Jack Cork would be able to offer something a bit more than he actually does going forward. And while Cork isn't massively overrated, I wouldn't bat an eyelid if he was a 77 maybe. He's the worst of the lot in this overinflated Burnley squad. Cardiff City Greg Cunningham. This one was a bit tricky, as the Cardiff squad isn't rated that high to begin with. But we've taken a look at their left backs, and surely Joe Bennett is their best option. The former Villa defender starts the game as a 72, while summer signing Greg Cunningham gets a 74, so therefore we've had to put him down as Cardiff's most overrated player on FIFA 19, but in fairness this wasn't an easy choice. Chelsea Alvaro Morata. The forward had a fantastic start to life at Chelsea last season, but that fast start quickly disappeared, with Morata ultimately falling out of favour so much that Olivier Giroud arrived in January. And you'd have to say that Giroud is at least equal to Morata, so how does Giroud only get an 82, while Morata is an 83? Of the two, Morata should be the one to change ratings, but is young enough to get better in the coming years. I do feel bad for Morata, as I think he's got far too much grief over the past 6 months, but maybe FIFA have overrated him slightly. Crystal Palace Jordan Ayew. This one I don't feel harsh about at all. I don't care what anyone says, Jordan Ayew isn't very good, and the fact he's blagged himself another Premier League move is ridiculous. The Ghanaian suffered relegation with Aston Villa and then Swansea, so maybe Palace should be worried that they've signed the new Roger Johnson. But despite his relegations and clear lack of quality in front of goal, Jordan Ayew has bluffed his way to a 77 rating, which makes him the Eagles' best out and out striker ahead of Christian Benteke, whose ratings really suffered due to his lack of form. Everton Mason Holgate. While Mason Holgate is certainly a player with potential, a 76 seems far too high for this stage of his career, especially when you compare him to other English centre-backs and their ratings. I mean, you'd probably put Alfie Mawson above Holgate, yet the Fulham defender only has a rating of 75, while likely future England star Joe Gomez is only one rating higher than Holgate with a 77. So based on that, a 76 for young Mason Holgate makes him a tad overrated, but maybe the guy who does the ratings is an Evertonian, who knows. Fulham Joe Bryan. The Cottagers brought in 2 left backs this summer, and they also have Ryan Sessegnon at their disposal. One of their signings was Joe Bryan, who arrived on deadline day from Bristol City. The young defender had a brilliant season at Ashton Gate, but was it a season that was good enough for his rating to go up by 4? On FIFA 18 he was 71, and this year he's a 75, which does just seem slightly too high, considering Sessegnon's a 75 as well. Huddersfield Town Ramadan Sobhi. The Egyptian winger managed to get a Premier League lifeline this summer, despite suffering relegation with Stoke City. Sobhi moved to Huddersfield for just shy of £6 million, but has never really done anything in the Premier League to justify his reputation. A tricky winger, Sobhi clearly doesn't have much of an end product, which is why he was never a regular at Stoke. But despite his lack of a final pass, Sobhi gets a 75 rating on FIFA, which makes him one of Huddersfield's best attacking options, but I don't think he is that in fairness. Leicester City Vicente Iborra. When the Foxes signed Iborra last year, it looked like a brilliant signing, with the ability to score goals from midfield and spray the ball about. However, the Spaniard hasn't made that much of a splash at the King Power Stadium, despite the odd special performance, yet he somehow got a rating of 81, which does seem very high compared to the rest of Leicester's midfield. In comparison, Adrian Silva's down to a 79. Liverpool Divock Origi. A few years ago, Divock Origi looked like he could be a future Liverpool star, but it's all started to go wrong for the Belgian. Last season Origi had no impact on loan at Wolfsburg, and this season he hasn't even got himself another temporary move, meaning his development will be stunted. His rating has gone down from last season to a 77, but even that seems high for a striker whose stock has dropped dramatically over the past 12 months. Manchester City Claudio Bravo. You've got a feel for Claudio Bravo, as he's been an absolute disaster since he arrived in England. Other than his penalty heroics in the Cup, Bravo's goalkeeping has left a lot to be desired, which is exactly why Edison was signed last summer by Pep Guardiola. But despite his failures in between the sticks, Bravo still has a rating of 79, which is very high when you look at other goalkeepers in the division who you'd much rather have in goal for your team over the not so safe hands of Bravo. Manchester United Nemanja Matic. With a rating of 86, that makes Nemanja Matic one of the best players in the Premier League, and that's just simply not true. While a few years ago there was no other holding midfielder you'd want in your team, Nemanja Matic is not the player he once was at Chelsea. While his impact at Manchester United was fairly immediate, the Serbian's powers have started to wane at Old Trafford. While still able to break up attacks and be a presence in the front of defence, Matic is no longer the athlete he once was, so to give him an 86 rating is far too high. Newcastle United Javi Manquillo. I mean, the lad's just not very good at football, is he? I've got no idea how he's got himself a 74 rating, but at least it's gone down from last year when it was far too high again. Manquillo has played for some big clubs in Liverpool, Marseille and Atletico Madrid, but has never nailed down a place or shown any sign of maturity, which is probably why he's ended up in Newcastle and still can't get a game. The only way I can describe Manquillo is like a puppy. He runs around up and down aimlessly, full of energy, before eventually taking a dump and not wanting to clear it up. Southampton Yannick Vestergaard. Considering he's 6'7", I wouldn't want to say this to his face, but this is YouTube so it's okay, and I don't think the Giant Dane is good enough for an 80 rating just yet. Sure, he's a massive presence in the air with his height, but in turn that means he's about as slow as a tractor, as well as having the turning circle of a bus. So the giant vehicle has probably been slightly overrated on FIFA, maybe only by a couple of ratings, although he could be an 80 in the future if he proves himself at St Mary's, like so many players have done in the past. But for now, an 80 seems high. Tottenham Hugo Lloris. This seems like a horrible thing to say about a man who actually lifted the World Cup this summer, but Hugo Lloris might be a little overrated on FIFA 19. The Spurs stopper has a rating of 88, which puts him amongst the world's elite goalkeepers. However, we've seen a fair few cracks in his game over the past year or so. Sometimes his decision making is rash, and attempts to play out from the back have ended in disaster, with egg all over the Frenchman's face. Therefore, an 88 rating might be a bit too kind for Hugo Lloris. Watford Gerard Deulofeu. While his rating has gone down from an 82 to an 81, Gerard Deulofeu still seems ever so slightly overrated on FIFA 19. The Spaniard was irresistible a few years ago at Everton playing alongside Romelu Lukaku and Ross Barkley, but it's been a while since we've seen that Deulofeu, which is surprising considering he's still only 24 years old. The winger's former Premier League joy combined with his Barcelona experience seem to have skewed Deulofeu's rating, who is down as Watford's joint best player with Abdoulaye Doucouré, who I'd say is much better than Deulofeu. West Ham Lucas Perez. 79. Lucas Perez has a rating of 79, and I for one just do not understand. That makes the Spaniard as good as Javier Hernandez, which really doesn't sit right with me. Perez looked like a great bargain signing at the start of the season, but it's yet to really click for the former gunner at the London Stadium. His rating is down from an 81 last season, so at least EA have seen that he was overrated, but it's still far higher than it should be. I mean, the lad spent last season getting relegated back at Deportivo. And finally Wolves' Leo Bonatini. Wolves are quite a hard one, as most of their players are either underrated or spot on, and even this one is harsh, as Leo Bonatini is only 73 rated. But the forward doesn't look Premier League quality at all, barely looking Championship quality despite a blistering start of life at Molineux. That means the pressure is really on Raul Jimenez to keep performing, because Bonatini is the only other real striker they've got. In the world of FIFA and the actual real world, Wolves might be best off signing a striker in January. So that's one player from every Premier League club who we think is overrated on FIFA 19. Let us know what you reckon in the comments below. Thanks for watching and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.